Hey, all, welcome to the Common Good Podcast. It's the 16th of April, day after tax day. Hey, you know what didn't happen, Rob, yesterday?
What didn't happen yesterday,
The
Doug?
federal government didn't spend any taxpayer dollars.
That's right. Listen, I used to be a conservative who
Uh-huh.
didn't like taxes
Mhm.
because, considered them to be theft and government overreach and
Yep.
funding of programs I didn't agree with and whatnot.
As you
Now
were
that I'm
told. Yep.
yes, yes, and now that I'm a progressive who understands modern monetary theory,
Oh,
realizes that oh, that's clever. Realizes that our tax dollars don't fund anything at all,
federal tax dollars, at least. Yep.
federal tax dollars, makes me hate taxes even more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like why? Like why are you taking my money?
100%.
You're just gonna burn it. Like what is happening here? I
You're
hate
just
it.
getting rid of it.
Yeah.
You're just like you're a garbage
Oh,
collector, just going
ah.
around and picking up the extra garbage and throwing it out. Hey, if you don't know what we're talking about, you can watch back through our streams and or go to our playlist on this if you're on our YouTube channel and watch all our stuff about how it works. The federal government produces money through the Treasury.
Mhm.
How much they produce dictated by the budget passed by
Mhm.
Congress. They
Yep.
don't take your tax dollars and spend them at the federal level. They take your tax dollars out of the economy because they're putting in a bunch of monies into the economy, but it comes from the Treasury, not from
Mhm.
taxpayers. You may have a
Yep.
lot of reasons you don't want to pay tax, and it'll only get worse when you start to
That's right.
understand how it
And
actually works.
listen, I understand the need to control inflation and the use of tax dollars to do
Yeah.
that, but I just figure why mine? Why mine?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and look, taxes do a whole lot of other things. They make
Mhm.
we can get we won't go down that road. But anyway, it was tax day yesterday, and if you felt like you were working for the federal government up until 87 days or 187 days, no, yeah, not really, not really. Hey, you know what else did happen yesterday?
What's that?
We had a beautiful day in Minnesota yesterday. By the way, today
Mm,
it's raining, cloudy, and feels like spring. April showers are going to bring some May flowers.
mm.
How is it there in Arkansas? By the way,
Do you
let's
know
get the
what Mayflowers
niceties.
bring, Doug?
Sneezes.
Pilgrims.
Yes. Wow. Wow. I mean, so many other things you could have said, but that was perfect. Disease, uh, you know, infiltrators, uh, pilgrims. Wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
How's it looking out the window there, squirreled away somewhere
It
outside of Fayetteville, Arkansas?
it's super windy. It feels like it has been windy for, 10 days or 2 weeks now, like, I had, like, 30-mile-an-hour winds today. It's just
Mm.
I'm tired of the wind.
What,
Though you wanna hear something weird that happened this morning? So, this morning I woke up to
yeah.
like a humming sound, a buzzing of some kind, of humming, and I'm like, "What in the world is that?" And, and Whimsy's like, "It's the fan in your room." So I turn the fan off and the humming didn't stop. So I start walking around and I get closer, it gets louder, and I go into my bathroom and I use a Quip, toothbrush,
Okay.
because I, fall prey to advertising on podcasts and occasionally on Instagram.
Huh.
And, my Quip toothbrush, which is hanging in the little Quip case, like stuck to the mirror in my bathroom,
Okay.
is on and buzzing. And normally it turns on like when I brush my teeth, you turn it on and it buzzes for 2 minutes and then you're done and you
It stops.
but
It stops after 2 minutes. Okay.
it's on and it's going and I have no idea how it got
Was it
turned on.
floating in the air, moving up and down like it was inside of a ghost's mouth? Was it?
No.
Was it
Just
levitating?
Yeah, Vanessa was like, "Did we have an earthquake or something?" I'm like, "I don't think an earthquake would cause that," but no. So very,
Huh.
very weird things. I think our house is haunted.
Is it battery powered or is it
It
charged?
is battery powered.
Hmm.
But it was in the case. It was so strange.
Wow.
So strange. Very
Well, keep an
weird.
eye
Very
on it.
weird morning. Yeah.
We have this weird thing. I should have brought the box down. I didn't know we were going to talk
Oh,
about
I've
this.
got a great transition of like, weird things in my house. There's also weird things going on in the
In the
House of
House of
Representatives.
Representatives. Well, we have this little Shelley has this little wooden box. I don't know.
Hmm.
It looks I don't know.
Yeah.
it's ornate. It feels like it's
Yes.
maybe from India or something.
Yep. Yep.
And in front of the box on the table, or we've moved around different places.
Mhm.
Every morning there will be a little teeny line of dust lined up exactly in a row.
Hmm.
And then we'll move it at night, move it back 3 inches. And the next morning there'll be another line. There'll be like, okay, there's something in there pushing this. There's little holes kind of in it. It's designed that way. The craziest thing. So we put it in the freezer for a week and just took it out. We just took it out. So either whatever it is, we froze and it's stuck, or we killed it.
Can you open the box?
Oh yeah, you can open it, but you can't see, like, there's no holes from the inside. There's just like decorative holes sort of on the outside. It is just wild. I'm going to make, if it happens again, I should have just set a time lapse, something
Yep.
to just record it. And so we could have just seen like what is going on. It's just that kind of creepy stuff, man. I'm getting to the age where it's just freaking me out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Now you have to worry that like whatever you froze in that box um, is gonna eventually stink.
Yeah, I'm thinking this thing is, I don't know, like termites or something. I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm just making stuff up. I
Hmm.
have no idea.
Hmm.
No idea.
Hmm.
But something's
Hmm.
like pushing some little living creature in there.
Yeah. I'm like we have like carpenter bees that like to drill into our drill holes into our pergola on our back porch,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll be sitting there and all of a sudden there'll be sawdust falling on you because there's a bee
Oh,
burrowing a hole
hmm.
into the pergola. I don't know.
Maybe little baby bees.
Yeah.
And then our garbage disposal stopped working just now. We
Oh,
had a little leak in it, and then Shirley went to turn it on, didn't turn it on. She's like, I bet it's just off. And I got under there and like, it just, we're in this house where like we've updated, we've been here for 30 years or something. And so like things we haven't updated in 25 years just are
yep. It's
all
time.
breaking.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. They all go at
Everything,
once.
everything
Oh,
is breaking.
oh, and
You know what
putting in
else
a new
broke?
garbage disposal. Oh, I mean it's doable for like I'm not a very handy person myself.
Oh,
But I have done it, and boy, that's not fun because you get down under there and you're
oh,
God, it's just
dude, I'm under that thing all the time. Like this just doesn't make any sense how it's under the sink is designed. Just doesn't make any sense. You know what else doesn't make any sense?
the House of Representatives.
Donald Trump when he says anything. All right.
Yes.
So apparently yesterday he
Oh,
was in Pennsylvania
mhm. The Great
ta-
Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
talking about Gettysburg. And look, here's the thing. I don't like picking on elderly folks who are losing it. I see
Mhm.
it coming. It's come. That train, the headlights have come around the corner. I see it
Yeah.
coming. Right.
Mhm.
Okay. You know, I've got imaginary things burrowing holes in boxes. I'm right on the edge here. But watching this guy say that Joe Biden is not competent to be president while he stands up and talks is something else. All right, so here we go. We're gonna
Oh, love it.
we're gonna we're gonna cut to this, and oh my God, folks, here we go. He's in Pennsylvania.
I've got no volume, Doug.
You have no audio.
Yeah, no audio.
Oh, what is going on? All right, you have no audio on the. Ah, geez, Louise. All right. Well, anyway, Donald Trump is rattling on about no, just he's trying to talk about Gettysburg, and honestly, he is just saying uttering complete nonsense. Unbelievable. In some ways, kind of beautiful. And it's just so, he clearly doesn't know what happened at Gettysburg. He now is in deep. He can't get himself out of it. So he's just saying things.
Yep.
And I don't know why you wouldn't be able to hear that. I don't know.
Yeah.
What
So
I'm
here's
seeing
here's
this
what he said, and I can't do a Donald Trump voice, but I'm not much of a of a voice imitator. What's that word that I'm
impersonator.
impersonator? Thank you. Donald Trump said, "What an unbelievable! I mean, it was so interesting and so vicious and horrible. and it's so beautiful in so many ways. It represented such a big portion of the success of this country. Gettysburg. Wow. And then he went on to talk about Robert E. Lee. Let me see if I can
Battle
find
of
my bit.
Gettysburg. Wow, it's kind of beautiful. It's a cemetery. I've been there. I've walked through it. Maybe you were there
Yeah.
too. When we did the uh, walk the walk. We were walking right through it. It's solemn and sad, and it's a civil war where thousands of
Mhm.
people brutalized each other in the United States. This guy's like sense that violence it can also be like also kind of beautiful in its own like who knew he was so macabre and
Yeah.
just so into violence and death as a kind of way of beauty. He's just a moron.
Yeah.
You
And
know, we've been
here's what
talking about
then
this Joker for all these years, and it's just clear. Rex Tillerson may not have been right about the decisions he made at Exxon,
yeah.
may not have been right as the decisions as the Secretary of State, but the man was right about one thing.
Yeah.
He is a friggin' moron.
Yep. Gettysburg. Wow. And again, I'm quoting the former president. Gettysburg. Wow. I go to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania to look and to watch. And the statement of Robert E. Lee, who's no longer in favor. Did you ever notice that? No longer in favor. Never fight uphill, me boys. Never fight uphill. They were fighting uphill. He said, wow, that was a big mistake. He lost his great general and they were fighting. Never fight uphill, me boys. But it was too late.
That's Trump speaking?
Yes. Yes.
Me boys? Is this a
Yes.
quote? Is this like some
Yes.
Civil War reenactment song?
Did you know that Robert E. Lee was Irish?
Was anyway, just a going up the hill, boys. No, Robert E. Lee was an insurrectionist who was brutalizing other American citizens so he could
Yeah.
keep holding slaves. That's what it was.
Yeah. Never
Donald
fight
Trump.
uphill, me
The
boys.
problem wasn't
Never
that they were
fight
fighting
uphill.
uphill. And I mean, guy's out of favor. Have you noticed that? Like he used to be a real winner, but then after he loses the Civil War, I mean, well, okay. I'm watching the Apple TV show called Manhunt, which is about the hunt for not Lee Harvey Oswald. We already know it. Lee Harvey, the assassinator of Abraham Lincoln.
Mm,
Um,
John Wilkes
and
Booth.
thank you, John Wilkes Booth. I was having a Trump moment there. I was like, guy, mustache, broken ankle. Uh, John Wilkes Booth. Again, don't go with three names.
Yeah, seriously.
You're gonna end up in infamy. Uh,
Mhm.
and the fact that like Lincoln was pushing so hard after the completion of the Civil War and the week before he was executed to not be brutalizing that they were still Americans, they were still our brothers is just still
Mhm.
goes down. I think in
Yeah.
history is something that we
Now,
left unsettled, in my own
I
opinion.
did something I don't often do. On Sunday, I went to see a movie by myself, and
Okay,
I went to see the
congratulations.
movie. I went to see the new movie Civil War, and let me tell you, fantastic,
Really?
brutal, horrific,
Is it
beautiful,
about the Civil
beautiful.
War?
No, it is. It's set at some point in the future.
Okay.
Nick Offerman plays
Oh.
a fascist president of the United States who has dissolved the FBI, and apparently, according to the dialogue, will shoot press members on site in Washington D.C.
Mhm.
Um, California and Texas have both seceded
Wow.
and have formed a Western Forces alliance and are headed into Washington D.C. There's also a
Wow.
Florida coalition of southern states that have seceded, but the story is not political. It's not
Okay.
about politics. It traces the journey of a group of reporters, two
Mm.
photographers and two writers as they drive from New York City to Washington D.C.
Mm.
And it is fantastic. It is just an amazing film.
All right.
Everybody, everybody, everybody needs to see it. It's
I
so
might go
good.
tonight. I might go
It
tonight
is
in your
so good,
recommendation.
and it's really funny that like on Twitter, which is where everything happens, right? Um, all the
Sure.
Trump supporters are, all the MAGA folks totally freaking out that um, this movie portrays a Trump-like president, and really all we know about him is he gets compared to Mussolini at one point by one of the reporters, and we find out that he eliminated the FBI and the free press. That's
And they're
all
like,
we know
"Hey,
about
you're
that is
talking
that
about."
is literally all we know about him. There's no like, this is a non-political movie that's very political, um, and just fantastic.
All
But
right.
they took that as like, "Oh, they're talking about Donald Trump."
And did you take it that way?
Um I expected going in that, knowing what I know about Nick Offerman and how much I like him, I kind of expected him to be a good guy, and that, Texas and the southern states were seceding again, and this was like a civil
Oh.
war, for the preservation of the Union. When in fact, you again, it doesn't go into the politics of it, but you kind of get the impression that maybe the Western forces are the good guys. Um,
Oh,
but
interesting.
it's
Nice.
really an anti-war movie that shows the brutality of, um, that people can inflict on each other, and the real danger of what could happen if our country goes down a road that it very well could go down, that what could happen in, small little towns in West Virginia and
Hmm.
Pennsylvania and Maryland and
Wow.
Virginia, as
Wow.
far from the front line, like just
Going dark, huh?
some horrible things taking place. Just really fantastic film, really great.
Okay. All right. Well, it might be on my docket tonight. Might be
Yep,
on my docket
highly
tonight.
recommended.
2 thumbs?
Two thumbs. Speaking of Civil War, did you
I'm
hear?
trying to
I'm
get the
making a yeah. I don't have the thing.
I
I
don't know how
can't.
to make it go off.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of Civil War, did you hear the comments of Speaker of the House Mike Johnson today, where he referred to himself as a wartime speaker? He referred
No.
to himself as a wartime speaker, and he was not talking about the Ukraine. He was Ukraine, not the Ukraine. He was not talking about Ukraine. He was not talking about Israel and Iran. He was talking about Democrats and the need to preserve the republic from Democrats. This guy, this guy, because I mean, Mike
Wartime
Johnson
president.
really and he says like the thing that will preserve the union. He said today, he views himself as a wartime speaker. It's the most tenuous time in the history of the country, even more than the Civil War period, because Democrats, want to turn the United States into some kind of European socialist
Be
utopia.
because that's
Um,
happening right now? Is that are we becoming a European utopia? I mean, there's
yeah,
Democrats in charge
I'm
of
like, yeah, and utopia? What? Like, that's a good thing, right?
I would like a
Yeah,
utopia.
yeah, the utopia sounds good. You're against utopia. Um, yeah, but and Mike Johnson is embattled not just from
Yeah,
Democrats, but from Republicans as well.
yeah.
Marjorie Taylor Greene filed a motion to vacate, has not called for the vote yet. But news broke today as well that a second congressman, Thomas Massey, I think from Mississippi, um,
Massive
has
Mississippi. Mhm.
said that he is going to join Marjorie Taylor Greene
Mississippi.
in in uh, in this motion to vacate, and Mike Johnson has a one vote majority in the House, and if he's lost two Republicans,
That's that.
means he's going to need the enemies on the other side of the of his war
I mean, it's really something.
to keep him as a wartime speaker. This guy, oh,
We're thinking by Yabbitt's instruction that it could be Kentucky,
could
where
be
Massey is
Kentucky.
from.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
frankly don't know where Tom Massey's from.
yeah. But Mississippi would have been a great uh,
Mm.
Mississippi. All right. Speaker Johnson. How long must we abide with thee, Speaker Johnson? I mean, dude, make hay while you can. Get everything done that you think you're going to want to tell your grandkids you did because you're on your way out. You're holding a losing hand and the time is running. It's it's a jailbreak, my friend, and he better get himself together. And then we could be thrown into all kinds of ridiculousness and shenanigans. Um, but you know what people have been asking about in the chats, Rob, is what is going on with the podium gate or lectern gate?
Oh, big update on Lectern Gate. And listen, I have been, I used to call it Podium Gate, but I have been converted by the It's a Lectern Twitter account, which is fantastic. Um, yeah. So yesterday, here in Arkansas, for
Uh-huh.
folks maybe that don't remember this, here in Arkansas, our governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, earlier well, in 2023, spent over $19,000 on a lectern, on that thing you stand behind. On a
Yeah.
podium is something you stand on. A lectern is something you stand behind. So spent $19,000 on a lectern um, that has never been used and has not been seen. There's been a lot of thought that um, maybe the money wasn't actually spent on a lectern. It was used to fund taking her friends on a trip to France with her. Turns out that that's not the case. The lectern does exist. It is now in possession of the Republican Party of Arkansas, and an audit um, commissioned by the Republican supermajority in the Arkansas General Assembly has come back with a report that there are at least 7 instances of Sarah Huckabee Sanders' administration, people in her office, breaking the law,
The law.
and yeah, and has referred the case to a district attorney, to a prosecuting
Ah,
attorney. Um,
really?
yeah. So apparently, as it turns out, they were not able to determine if $19,000 is a reasonable price for a lectern. Um, the, the-
They were like going on to like the blue book for lecterns, and they're like,
oh
they
yeah,
do actually range from about $179, to 24,000. So it could have been an
yeah,
upper end
yeah, yeah, yeah.
lectern.
Lecturnsareus.com. I'm sure they were on
Uh,
trying to
they
find out.
couldn't determine
Um,
if $19,000 was overpaying for a lectern.
so what they wanted to do is they had funds available for transition funds that were designated by the General Assembly, about $400,000 to be used for computer equipment and
Sure,
maintenance services in the
sure.
transition.
The stuff
That
you
had
do.
to be
Yeah.
that money had to be used, I think, by the end of June. So right at the end of June, there's a whole process that you go through for procurement with a purchase order and all of that stuff, where everything gets logged and taken care of correctly and blah blah blah. And they didn't have time to do all that, so they used a P card, a purchase card, a credit card instead, to buy the lectern so that they could use
Yeah. Spend the money.
these
Yeah.
transition funds.
Sure. As you
Now,
do.
some question if a lectern qualifies as computer equipment or maintenance services, but you know, new governor wants new lectern. Okay. Lectern was finally delivered, and then was sold to the Republican Party of Arkansas. The Republican Party of Arkansas, quote unquote, when all of this went down, reimbursed the state and took possession of the lectern.
For nineteen
Um,
thousand dollars.
again, yes, again, again, not following proper procedure. There's a
Yeah.
procedure for getting rid of equipment, like
Yeah.
that the state owns, that you have to go through, and
Yeah. The
there's
state can't just decide to sell it to the Republicans.
yeah,
They it's not
and so
it's not a
all of
garage
this.
sale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you don't just put like a $19,000 lectern on Facebook Marketplace and like, oh, that Joe Woods, the
Yeah.
chairman of the Arkansas Republican Party, is like scrolling Facebook. It's like, oh, look,
Hey,
there's a
is this
lectern.
still
That's
available? He sends the, is this
yeah,
still
that's right.
available?
That's right.
And
That's right.
he hears
So,
a bing down the hall from the person in the governor's office. Bing. They're like, yes, it is. What's your best price?
so
I mean, honestly, we
apparently,
could create that whole fake string
it's
about
so
that.
fantastic.
Okay,
So great.
we've got something to do today.
I I wish that I had sent you. Sarah Huckabee Sanders tweeted yesterday a video um, that was set to music from Jay-Z, which, question of whether or not he would be appreciate having his music sampled in this way. Um, and it has all these images of and they call it a podium. All these images of podium and this, and then it ends with a little image of the podium and it says, "Come and take it," which is,
Oh, like Second
the
Amendment gun.
Second Amendment, Greg Abbott,
Yeah.
like basically flaunting the fact that they have gotten away with this. But we shall see.
Well,
Lectern Gate continues on,
yeah, it's been
and
a while since we've had an update, and we're
yeah.
now into
Well,
April.
we have waited and waited and waited for this audit to be released. It finally has been released, and you know, Sarah Huckabee Sanders and people in her administration apparently, have violated Arkansas law in a number of ways by shredding a bill of lading. Um, some of the
Good
receipts
Lord.
were later, were reprinted and handwritten on them to be reimbursed, and well after the fact. So
Sure.
there's a
What a
lot of
mess.
these. It just comes back. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is not good at this. She's not good. She's
Yeah.
not good at being a governor.
Yeah. And apparently
She's
doesn't
not
have
good.
good people around her either who can figure out how to spend the money and not get tied up in
Yeah.
criminal activities.
But for all of you that were wondering if the lectern exists, yes, the lectern exists. It is at Republican Party of Arkansas headquarters
Is
in
that an
Little Rock.
actual photo of it
And
on the screen that we have on the screen there? Is that in that?
that I think is that's a photo of one like it. I don't know if that's actually it. That might be the one that I can't remember.
Okay.
But anyway, it does exist and it has never been used.
She's
It's
never
never been
stood
used.
behind it. It's never had the governor's seal put on
No,
it.
no.
Incredible. One of the things that conservatives used to say to me and you and people like us religiously was, why do you liberal types, progressive types, make everything so complicated? How come it's not just the straight, you know, way it is? Just the Bible or theology, just like, no, it's just not everything doesn't have to be complicated. The plain reading of what's happening in the world explains it. They don't say that anymore because now it's all, well, what do they say? What do they mean? What do they think? What do they do? The Supreme Court's up to this in their little nonsense, taking up the case to say, does the actions of Capitol rioters actually constitute obstructing justice or obstructing Congress? If Congress is going to be doing an act on a particular day and that day you violently attack the Capitol for the purpose of stopping them from certifying the election, which is on the docket for that day by constitutional mandate, and your actions are intended to do that, does that actually, though, constitute obstructing Congress and therefore people can be charged? This is what defense attorneys for many of the January 6th convicted rioters are saying was, no, these actions might, you can't tie it to that. And the Supreme Court is taking this seriously and could rule that in their estimation, the language of what it means to obstruct justice is not met by violent beating of police officers, breaking windows, and threatening members of Congress to the point that they had to delay for numbers of hours, 12 hours or more, the action of Congress. And now we live in a world where they're like, but does that actually constitute?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when people were out of their minds about the phrase, I guess it depends. Should we say it together, everybody? What the
The
definition
definition
of
of is.
is.
Yeah,
What? It's
and
easy. What? There is a relationship versus was, or actually is and was, enormously different question. By the way, Bill Clinton was asked in a court setting, "Is there a relationship between you and Monica Lewinsky?" And he said, "No." And then he's convicted for perjury, and he's like, "They didn't ask me, 'Was there one?' They asked me, 'Is there currently one?' And there was not. We'd broken off the relationship." Which maybe is a little funny, like, maybe we'd have to say, "Yes, there is," because she was my intern or whatever, whatever, whatever. But
Yeah.
the more specific definition. But now we're just way beyond that. Now it's like, what's a lectern? When did we buy it? What does it mean to grab them by the genitals? Is that really what? Do any of these words really have Gettysburg? Does it really have a meaning? And now
Never fight uphill, me boys. Never fight
it's
uphill. Uh,
is
so Neil Gorsuch,
obstructing Congress actually
Supreme
what was
Court
going on when
Justice
they were rioting at the
Supreme
Capitol?
Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch, who should not be on the Supreme Court because of Mitch McConnell. It should be Merrick Garland instead. But besides that, apparently in oral arguments today, he listed multiple cases of folks who quote obstructed a congressional proceeding without receiving a 20-year sentence. And his examples were sit-ins at a trial during the Kavanaugh protests, uh, the pulling of a fire alarm by Congressman Jamal Bowman, hecklers in the
Mhm.
crowd, you know, standing up for the people of Palestine, and mostly peaceful protests by Black Lives Matters protesters. So clearly, what they're trying to do is provide some whataboutism
Yeah.
and set this up as some kind of politically motivated thing.
Yeah.
But listen, the sit-ins at the Kavanaugh hearings, uh, Congressman Bowman, who, full disclosure, I know personally and as a friend, pulling a fire alarm, people heckling during protests about Palestine, and people protesting during the Black Lives Matter. Uh, None of those were violent attacks on the U.S. Capitol, uh, in which Capitol Police were beaten. The uh, the commands, the instructions given by uniformed officers were ignored, where people trespassed and violated not just the places, the 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 dais, the chamber where the Senate and the House meets, the chambers where they meet, but also people's offices. Uh, I mean, it's like saying, like, you know, listen, someone who commits grand theft auto, like, why do they get a bigger punishment than the person who, like, shoplifts a
Yeah.
dress out
Right.
of a store? Like, yeah, they're the same category of
Stole a thing.
crime,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they are completely different in size and scale and intent,
Well,
and,
yeah.
like, punishments often are based on, like, the totality of what happens, not just, like, the
That's right.
category. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and to the specific point I think they're getting at is, was the intention to obstruct Congress? Were you trying to get Congress to stop something? I think people, if I have done protests and been arrested for those protests, it was to raise a moral voice,
Mhm,
not to stop Congress from functioning. If someone does a action
mhm.
protest designed to stop Congress from functioning, and that's
Yes.
your intention and you execute that intention, then yeah, you should be. And that's what was going on January 6th. But there are so many people, and maybe it's Gorsuch too, and us, but we did this on Red Hat, Blue Hat with Casey, um, which is my conversation with a Trump supporter. Um, he's like, January 6th wasn't a particular day. They were just protesting, like, no, they were there that day because Donald Trump said, come that day because we have to stop Mike Pence.
Oh,
And if he
in
doesn't do it, then you have like literally it was
can
that day
can you
that
believe serendipity that that protest took place on the very day, the very time that Congress was ratifying the free and fair election of Joe Biden to be president of the United States. I mean, can you believe the coincidence of that?
Crazy
So
talk.
serendipitous.
So hopefully the Supreme Court, they have a lot on their docket. That they took this up is concerning.
Yes.
Um, and look, to be fair, the way this whole thing is worded is a little bit arcane. So
Mhm.
the and the purposes of when it was written might have been different, but this is how law works. So I sure hope that the Supreme Court kind of gets their head around this, because to your average person, if they're like that doesn't count, then there is no obstructing justice
Right.
or obstructing Congress in my
Yeah,
view. I
there
don't.
is no such thing as an insurrection.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't exist.
Hey, one of the things that it took us a little while to get to, but it's because we started with a little bit of Trump, and we don't want to be totally Trump all the time. But yesterday, Donnie was in court, and
Sleepy Don.
Sleepy Don, Dozy Don, and Dozy Don was having a hard time keeping his eyes open.
I mean,
As
we've all been there, right?
oh, dude, in the middle of this
Church
podcast, there's been
services.
days I've had. Yeah,
Yeah, you're sitting in class in college, like, oh
I fell
man, you
asleep,
just
Rob, in a
hmm.
premarital counseling session.
Were you were you being counseled or were you
No, no.
giving the counsel?
Thank you. Great clarification. I was the counselor. They were
Oh,
coming to me as their pastor who was going to marry them, sitting
no.
on the couch. I'm sitting on a chair in my family room. They're talking. I
Oh,
fell asleep.
you nodded off.
Yeah,
Oh.
dozed off. I dozy donned. I just dozy donned right down to my chest, and I
Oh.
popped my head up, and there was liquid on my lip,
Yeah.
and the look on their face was,
Are they still married?
I don't know. I can't even remember who they were actually.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I married him. Uh, it was bad. It was bad.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
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 Listen, and the descriptions of this, and apparently he did it again today on day 2. It's so funny because 'cause we've all been there. This the talk of, like, the head dropping and then pops back up, and the head
Yeah.
dropping, pops back up.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all been there,
Totally.
but we're not during a trial
No,
that could
no.
send you to jail and disqualify you officially for
Yeah.
being president of the United States because you paid hush money to a porn star.
Mhm.
I it thi This guy, just hilarious, and it just proves what we've said. Every accusation is a projection.
Yeah.
He calls Joe Biden Sleepy Joe Biden because he's Sleepy Donald Trump.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going dozy Don.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because if we're gonna go Sleepy Joe, and I just think we go dozy Don, and he can't. He doesn't have the stamina.
Yeah. Well,
In
maybe
fact,
it's because he's
maybe
up in
this
the
could
middle of
become.
the night, like, posting on Truth Social, the junk stock company. Um, oh, man.
I
Listen,
guess we
so
could ask Stormy
apparently
Daniels. We could ask Stormy Daniels if there was a point where he had greater stamina, he could stay awake,
oh,
and
mm,
then we could
uh,
ask others more recently. Has he lost a step?
yeah.
Is he a little more dozy?
So, a couple of ridiculous things coming out of the trial. A couple other ridiculous things coming out of this trial.
Totally.
One is apparently he is already being charged with violating the gag order. He's got a partial gag order on this trial. And there's going to be a hearing apparently next Tuesday on whether or not he violated that. And did you hear what the punishment is if he's found guilty of violating the gag order?
I thought it was
They're asking.
$1,000. Is it something
Yeah,
different?
it is. It would be a fine of $3,000. Do you think he's going to have to get a bond
U.S.
company to? Yeah,
Yeah,
think he's going to have
U.S.
to get a bond company to pay that because he doesn't actually have any money.
We have to
Um,
borrow it from Michael Cohen again, like he did the 100 grand that he had to give to Stormy Daniels after he gave her a
right.
gag order. But
Yeah.
bump.
The other thing is, the judge is requiring him to be in court, which I love.
Yeah, love it. He has to
Um,
go. He has to go to Barron's graduation, and the court was like,
well,
"Nope."
no, apparently he hasn't asked yet. Uh, Apparently, from what I've read, is that this is a bit of a smokescreen. They're saying that the judge denied him the
Oh,
ability to go to Barron's graduation from high school. Um, and Barron would be his tall son, as
Right.
opposed to the other ones. Um, Apparently, from this is like they're all saying, you know, Trump's lawyers are all saying that he's not allowed to go to Barron's graduation, but that actually, like that, I
Yeah.
don't think there's actually been a ruling on that. Like they just lie about
They just
everything. These
lie
people,
about everything. That's
they
it.
just lie. They lie
Just
and
say
lie and
stuff.
lie.
And by lying, we mean saying stuff that's not true in order to convince people of things that are not accurate. That's what they're
Yes,
doing.
yes,
If you're unclear about the meaning of the word lie, just
right.
for the
Yes, yes, and this is a personal pet peeve of mine when someone misstates something and they say,
yes,
"Oh, no, I lied." I'm like, "No,
yeah,
you didn't lie, because
yeah,
lying you misspoke. Lying has intent."
yes.
And, they're lying about everything. But listen, if this trial is not going on, is there any chance Don would go to Barron's
There's
graduation
no.
otherwise?
You think he's going to go sit in some soccer field or football
Oh,
field? And
you think he falls asleep when they're like, jurors are being chosen, to decide his fate, whether or not he has to go to prison? That puts him to sleep. Imagine reading the names. Trump is near the end of the alphabet. You gotta get
yep,
through the A's and the B's and the C's, reading all of those names. Drowsy Don is
in
gonna
the
be
sun, with the sun
oh.
beating down, the Florida
Oh,
sun
yeah,
beating down on
and
him,
then he's
sitting
gonna be like,
outside.
"Oh, why didn't I put on sunscreen?" And, like, the whole thing.
Yeah,
He's gonna be sleeping through Barron's graduation.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just, and this again for 8 years has been the guy we've just had to deal with.
And it's
It's just
unending.
exhausting.
It's every single day. There's some on it's amazing. Like,
Yep.
you uh, when Donald Trump left office on that glorious day, that Joe Biden was, inaugurated, and you and I were in DC, we actually saw Donald Trump's helicopter flying over Washington, DC, as he headed out of town gloriously. We did a podcast from a hotel room, where yeah, that's
So
what like
good.
to rename Mar-a-Lago.
Melatonin.
Melatonin. No melatonin needed,
Yeah,
apparently. Like,
yeah,
I think he needs some Red Bull or something. Um, so, eh, we did a podcast where I kind of on the spur of the moment put together a list of like the craziest things that happened during the Donald Trump presidential administration during those 4 years. And I think I was, in a very short amount of time, able to write like 35 things that
yeah.
like, because it's just unending the
The
craziness.
crazy, just the crazy.
And this, from the whole Gettysburg to, never fight uphill, me boys, to falling asleep, like it is
Yeah.
unending.
I mean, truthfully, he's a man in his late 70s
Mhm.
who is not sleeping well
Right.
and sitting in a courtroom
Understandably. Mhm.
with nothing to do because you don't read and you're just going to doze off. So you shouldn't, if you can't stay awake for it, you shouldn't be running for it. I think that should just be because here's the thing, they're on Biden all the time about this stuff.
Mhm.
You know, closing his eyes during a prayer and they act like he's dozy down, like he's dozy down over there. So it's just so unbelievable. Hey, speaking of old Joe, he's got his own thing going on. This was an interesting article by Molly Ball where she makes the argument that Biden worries about the left, but the voters he needs are in the center. President falls behind with independents. They don't see the White House for what it's actually doing, and that's really really interesting. Like I know he's got to hold the coalition together, and this just might be a timing issue. You know, it's like building a house. You got to do it in a particular order. So it might be that they're going to really build confidence with the left now, so they get them tucked in, and then go after those independents. But I
Yeah.
tend to agree with this. I think the more progressive left, people like me and others, are not going to wander off because they just already recognize what the consequences are.
Yeah.
And
So, I mean, it's real typical, that in a in a campaign, there's kind of the trope is that you run to the if you're a Democrat, you run to the left during the primary, and then you run to the center in the general election. That's the way to get elected. You got to win the primary first, so you go to the left, and then you come back to the center. Um, and it appears that that is, though, there's not a primary for Joe Biden. Thank you, Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson. Um, so Joe Biden is trying to secure the base, and then has plenty of time to move back to the center.
Yep.
We have asked the question. Both Joe Biden and Donald Trump have a problem within their own party. There was the none of the above, or the un
Anyone,
un
literally
un
anyone else guy.
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to remember, in Michigan and other places there was
Yeah.
a
Uncommitted.
uncommitted, was a big question mark of, is this 18% of his support of Democratic voters that are voting uncommitted, are they going to come home? Donald Trump on the other side had 30 some percent of Republican voters that were voting for Nikki Haley and not for him. And, the question becomes, are they going to come home? And ultimately, like, that question could decide this election.
Yeah.
Will Joe Biden be able to get the progressive voters, and particularly those who are upset with him about a few particular issues, what's happened in Gaza, as well as issues like student loans. And he's made some strides on all of this. Will he be able to get them to come home? Will Republican voters come home to Donald Trump?
Mm-hmm.
And then the big question, this is one that you and I have talked about as well. What about the Republican voters who voted for
Yeah.
Biden in 2020?
Will they do it again?
Will they do it again, or will they go with RFK Jr. or someone else? And so it's very interesting to see,
Yep.
how all of this is going to play out. But all of the polls are trending in
Yeah.
Joe Biden's direction right now.
But you need
Like,
them all. As we've said so many times, in those 5 states, the home of the
70,000 people
Abbotts.
in the United
Yeah.
States.
The home of the Abbotts, and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, and then home of the Abbotts, of course, Georgia. Like, that's it. That's where it matters. Everywhere else does not matter.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
I
unless it's
just,
such
I
a
imagine,
failing that he's going to lose some state he shouldn't lose. But look, even if he just wraps up, I mean, we used to be called the blue wall. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, a Republican can't win. Like, that's just true, and that's what needs to happen. But I saw Sununu, the governor of
yeah,
New
oh
Hampshire,
my goodness.
who was hardcore against Trump, almost an
Oh,
ever-Trumper, go on to
yep.
a new show on Sunday with George Stephanopoulos and say, it shouldn't be shocking to you that a Republican governor is going to support the Republican nominee. And Stephanopoulos was just like, after all the things you said, after he leads an insurrection, does it? Yep, of course. It's just all about team. It's all about team. Like, they are working hard. And I just don't get it, right? Like, what do you think what do you think you're doing? Like, you can't have a one-time exception and just be like, look, this guy is just totally disastrous. But this thing about the groupthink and party only, and maybe that happens with Democrats as well.
Oh yeah,
Maybe
blue no
that's
matter
maybe,
who.
yeah. It is. That's not a thing to brag about. It seems to me. You know what else isn't a thing to brag about? Freaking Israel.
Oh my goodness.
Big freak out over the weekend when Iran sent a bunch of drones into Israel, and then they were 90% of them or whatever were destroyed, and then Iran was like,
Amazing.
okay, that's it, we're done. Like, this is what they retaliated for, some action of Israel that they did against particular assets of Iran, and then the U.S. is like to Israel, hey, and we're done. Like, there's no more. Just knock this off. And it seems like that has settled down. But what hasn't settled down is the fact that Israel now is so conflicted in their own war cabinet about what they should be doing in Gaza that people are going to suffer because Israel can't figure out what it wants to do. It's just so bad. This is so bad. And for all the people that think the United States can just tell Netanyahu and Israel what to do, they
Nope.
can't.
No.
They're not listening. They don't want to listen. It's just terrible. And this whole look, international affairs just show all of us on a regular basis. It's an overly complicated world with so many things going on simultaneously. One is rarely ever happy with international decisions, especially international military decisions. There are not good options. And I think that's the situation here. Now, some administrations make it worse, Trump, and some administrations make it better. I think in a lot of ways the Biden administration has. Obama, I felt, was a little mixed. I'm not sure they were helping sometimes, maybe not. But it just continues to be a friggin' mess. And well, that's what I got today. What do you got, Rob?
Yeah,
Any more?
I mean, I do want to just say this about the attack that took place on Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I am 100% believe that Israel is in the wrong about how they've retaliated against Gaza, and so this is not a necessarily a pro-Israel thing. This is a pro-technology thing. This is a pro-Ronald Reagan thing. Seeing that Iron Dome in use, and seeing all of those drones getting blown up, and all those missiles being intercepted, and remembering back to like the idea of Star Wars, the Strategic Defense Initiative by Ronald Reagan, and the absurdity of the idea that we're going to shoot a bullet to knock a bullet out of the air, which was the analogy that was used. It was really cool seeing it in action. It was really something. And frankly, for the innocent Israeli people, I'm really glad that it worked.
I want no country killing anybody in any country. That would be for sure better. Stop killing people.
Yes, until we can get rid of all of these missiles, let's get Iron Domes for every country.
Iron domes galore. Like, you get an Iron Dome, and you get an Iron Dome.
Chicken in every pot and an Iron Dome in every country. That's what we're running on.
Fair enough. Hey, thanks everybody. Thanks for being a part of the podcast today. Look at that. We did it in 52 minutes, 53 minutes by the time we finish. Thanks for joining us in the afternoon. This seemed to work out all right.
And listen, get on Twitter and look up Sarah Huckabee Sanders and check out her podium video. You won't regret it.
Thanks, Peggy. Thanks, Yabbits, Donna, Jim, Kevin. This is a Squirrely Prepper Lifestyle. Thanks to all of you for your constant support, Peggy, and being a part of the chat and all the rest of this. So we really appreciate it. I'm just scrolling through to see if there's anybody else. Danny. And we're really glad to have you a part of the podcast. And if you're not already on the Vote Common Good email list, hey, we'd love to have you. So go to votecommongood.com. Done?
Done.
All right. Thanks, everybody.